Thanks so much for watching the first one, those that did. If you didn't, please stop what you're doing now. Watch the first video first, because it's full of gold like you wouldn't believe. Today, we're talking about what do you need to do before a Sunday. Not during the rehearsal, not during the set. What does the MD need to do before a Sunday? And as you can see from the PDF sheet here, I've kind of broken it down into 3 things, and then there's a few more things for us to discuss later in the video. Okay, so what do you need to do? Number 1, chat to the worship leader. We talked last week about the differences between different worship leaders and what they might want from the MD. So I'd say before a Sunday, it's always helpful to check in with them, send them a text, doesn't have to be long, but ask them kind of what they want, maybe if they want tracks, and if there's any kind of particular musical stuff that they're looking for as well. Just have a little check-in, and yeah, that will kind of make your life easier on the day. Number 2, learn the songs. Obviously it goes without saying, but as the MD, there's kind of an increased burden of responsibility weighing down on your shoulders in terms of how well you know the songs. We'll come on to that in a sec. But that would be number 2, to make sure you've learned the songs. And finally, number 3 is prepare the tracks. Now, some people don't have Ableton Live on their own laptop. It's a relatively expensive piece of software, it's like 400 quid, and absolutely not expecting everyone to buy that. There is a trial version, which I'm not sure to what extent you can prepare the tracks on the trial version. I think maybe you can, but that will obviously expire after a certain time, so that's not ideal. But for those that do have Ableton, then preparing the tracks is a good thing. If you don't, then just get in contact with me and I can kind of help you do that. But yeah, that's the kind of third thing, is if you're able to, make sure the tracks are ready. And there's obviously the set of videos on this course that was kind of like a prequel to the main event. There was a set of 3 videos talking about how we use Ableton and how to prepare Ableton, so have a look at those. So those are the 3 things. Chat with the worship leader, learn the songs, and prepare the tracks. There's a little optional extra as well, which is, as the MD before Sunday, you might want to think about if you want to get creative. There's obviously no limit to what you can do kind of creatively. Things that people have done in the past are maybe based on the particular personnel that are in the band that week, or the particular instruments. Say if it's an acoustic setup with a cello and a violin, you might just want to start thinking about how you can reframe the songs for that band. Or you can get to the extreme. Something that Tricky's done in the past is kind of like done a whole arrangement just for a particular song. He's had the energy and the passion to do that. So you might want to kind of like even create a little demo of how you imagine the song going, and then send that to the worship leader, see if they like it, that kind of thing. And anything in between. You might just want to start to think about, oh, that particular song, how are we going to pull that off? Maybe there's a song that's particularly complicated and you want to kind of simplify it a little bit, so you might want to be thinking about how that could work. So yeah, or maybe you want to bring a particular genre into the worship that week, so you could like think about maybe just altering up what the drums are doing in one of the songs to give it a slightly different feel. So those are the things. The main bulk of the video today is I want to talk about point number 2, learning the songs, and exactly what that means, what that entails. Last week we talked about the tricky method for learning a song. So this was almost a kind of introduction into how to memorise a song. At KXC we ask all the musicians not to be reading from charts, but to be playing from memory. There's kind of several reasons for this, not least it's really helpful just to have the song internally, and you'll feel a lot freer if you memorise the songs rather than being glued to an iPad. Obviously there's times when a song is sprung on you last minute or spontaneously. It's helpful to have an iPad there. You can't learn all the songs ever, but gradually building up your knowledge of the songs, you'll find that really helpful, and that's what we ask everyone to do. This week I want to talk about 4 different things that I mean when I'm talking about learning the songs, particularly for the MD. Structure, chords, your own detailed parts, and finally what I'm going to call bare bones theory. So the first one, A, structure. make sure you know the structure of a song. I think out of everything, this is the most important thing that you need to prepare before Sunday as the MD. So, you know, all the instrumentalists, hopefully they'll be learning their own parts, but as the MD, there's a particular responsibility on you to have an awareness of the structure of the song. That might be often something that the other musicians maybe don't focus on so much. And structure can be important because a lot of our songs that we use on Sunday, they can all feel quite similar, maybe even identical in structure. But it's the little tiny little tweaks between songs that make all the difference. So whether there's 2 bars or 4 bars before verse 2, whether there's a double chorus or a single chorus at a certain moment in the song, how many times we go around the bridge, you know, all these like little things. Or a classic one is if there's an extra bar of build before a final chorus, you know, that kind of thing. As the MD, I'd encourage you to make sure you're just really confident with the structure. It's in those moments in worship on a Sunday where maybe the drummer hasn't learned the song quite as well as they thought, and they're really just unsure, is there an extra bar of build here or not? And you as the MD, you can clear that up in a moment by saying, okay, hold for an extra bar, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that clarity will be the difference between there maybe being a car crash or not. So make sure you know the structure inside out. So that's the first part. Number 2, the chords. I'm going to get my little assistant for this. Phil Ellis Martin's Martin. I want to talk about chords. Now obviously when you're learning a song you learn the chords. From an arrangement perspective, slash chords are really important and I think often kind of undervalued. So I just want to talk through kind of 3 or 4 different songs where we use slash chords, where they kind of make a real difference to the feel of the song. Slash chords often bring about an emotion, and I guess there's a complexity, a richness to the chords that say if it's 1/3 instead of just the 1 chord, so we're in G for all of these examples, so the 1 chord would be G, the 1/3 just got a real different feel, an emotion, a heaviness to it. And often these slash chords are really integral to an arrangement, and so I would say just make sure that you pay special attention to the slash chords. Now, when we are using the national number system, we often say 3 and 7, and what we actually mean is 1/3 and 5/7. We don't mean the 3 minor or the 7 diminished, which would be the correct chords in the scale. We mean 1/3 and 5/7. And if we mean the 3 minor, then the MD would often shout 3 minor rather than 1/3. So yeah, whenever you hear 3 or whenever you hear 7, that's what we mean, 1/3 and 5/7. So I just want to go through 3 or 4 songs, talk about the importance of the slash chords in these songs. So firstly, Build My Life, the chorus. Again, we're in G. Holy, there is no one like you, there is none beside. Open up my eyes in wonder. So that chord, the 3rd chord there, was, so it started 4, 4, then 2, then there was a 1/5 chord, which is a beautiful chord, gives that kind of like incompleteness, which is so different to just the 1 chord, which is often erroneously played. So that would go, holy, there is no one like you, there is none beside you, open up my eyes. And I'd say that's wrong, that's not the right chord. Make sure that the bass player particularly is playing the 5 chord there. The next one, I've got my computer there, so I'm cheating every now and again, I lose eye contact with you. The next one is This Is Our God, Freely You Gave Yourself For Us. The Hillsong smash hit from the mid-noughties. Just the pre-chorus has got some lovely slash chords. So it starts on the 5, and I will 3. Your feet, I will fall, and then it goes to the 5/7, the 7th chord. 1/3. So I'll just kind of try and sing along to that as well. And I will fall at your feet. I will fall. And there's 7 again. Again, another example of where chords are like completely fundamental and integral to the arrangement of the song. Another song would be Jesus, Jesus, Friend Forever. So this is a 4-3 chord rather than 4-1. So 4-1 would sound like this. Jesus. And again, I just don't think that's quite right. That the chords should be 4-3, and it's just got that extra richness and incomplete feeling, which makes it a bit more emotional, to be honest. Jesus. And the final example is Wait on You by Maverick. This is just the bridge. Wait on the Lord. Again, I'm doing it in G, so it starts on the 4. Wait on the Lord. Wait on the Lord. He will renew. So it's a 1, then it does 2, 3, and then 7, which is lovely. That little pattern, 2, 3, and then the 5/7 is just so rich and a beautiful part of that arrangement and really worth catching. And then I think the last time before the chorus it does then go to the 5 instead of the 7. So yeah, it's just those little intricacies of some of the arrangements that's really worth picking up on. Okay. The third thing to talk about with learning the songs is knowing your own detailed parts. On a Sunday there's loads to think about as an MD. The last thing you want to be thinking about is whether you've actually got your parts on lock or not. So just make sure you spend some time, whatever time you need, just making sure you've got your own parts down so you can be worrying about other stuff. Then the final thing is bare bones theory. At KXC we really want to encourage all of our musicians to simplify as much as possible their parts. So we're not going after super complex, complicated parts, and we're not kind of putting all of our hopes on musicians nailing really complicated parts. What's far more important is respecting the energy that's required at different times in the song. What happens is if each part, say let's just talk about the back line, so drums, bass, guitar and keys. If each of those is doing a very simple job about what they should be doing, but with the correct energy, then when we bring these parts together, the sum of the parts will be wonderful. They'll fit together and the song will make real sense. And that really is all that's required. So we want to encourage bare bones thinking. So each instrument playing their part in a really solid way, but with the right energy. So for example, the drummer, it's right at maybe even in a verse, they're playing with a closed hi-hat and a simple beat, simple appropriate beat. Obviously not playing in the wrong time signature, staying with the click, all the basics, playing with great tone, hopefully they've got the snare sounding good. And a closed hi-hat maybe in the verse, but later on in maybe one of the later choruses, when we're big, we want more energy, those hats need to be open or they're on the ride, kind of crashing the ride. If they're still on a closed hats, that's where I would say the part is wrong. Maybe they've got the groove right, but the energy is wrong. And it's just a simple matter of opening those hats so that we've got more energy coming through. That makes all the difference when we put all of these parts together. Now, as the MD, this is a bit more of a kind of lifelong journey really, and you can't be expected at the start of your MD journey to have an understanding of all the different parts of the different instruments for each song. However, as you go, I want you to challenge yourself to start to have an understanding of maybe what each part might be doing. And this doesn't need to be as intimidating as it might seem. remember, we want to go after simplicity. So just having an understanding of the simple job that each instrument might be doing at any one moment in a song will begin to help you to understand that if something doesn't sound quite right, you might be able to start to hear, oh, which part needs a bit of help. So maybe the keys are playing eighth notes and it's quite intense when actually it should be a lot sparser. Maybe the keys are playing with a voicing that is cutting through too much. Maybe the bass player is playing too many notes and they need to be playing something that's simpler. Maybe the bass player's not playing enough notes. Maybe they should be doing 16th or 8th notes and pumping it when you want a bit more energy. Now, I wanted to kind of like demonstrate this practically. So I've prepared just a little demo of Cornerstone on Logic, and I want to chat you through this kind of little session. Now, I'm not saying that you'd be expected to create this ever for a Sunday, and I'm not even saying that you'd need to have an intimate knowledge of what each part is doing, but I wanted to demonstrate what's going through my brain if I was MDing Cornerstone. The parts that I have recorded here are what might be going on in my head and what I'd be thinking that each part should do. What you'll see is that each part that I've recorded is probably pretty simple, but when you put them together it sounds, I think, pretty good. And I deliberately didn't listen to the original recording, the original Hillsong recording of Cornerstone, to check what each part would be. Instead, I just wanted to think to myself, okay, what do I think each part should be doing to make this song fly, to make it sound good? And of course, there'll be some Sundays where maybe there isn't a guitarist. And so you might, as the MD, need to think, okay, well, what simple parts does maybe the keys player need to do in order to still make this song feel full and for the arrangement to work? Okay, so this is bare bones theory. Thinking a little bit like a producer, you're bringing all the ingredients together and hopefully making a really amazing sound. Okay, so here's the Cornerstone session.
Okay, here we go. Here's the session. So, as I was explaining, this is not something that you should necessarily be putting together, but this is just an opportunity to put onto a screen what might be going through maybe my head or an MD's head as they're approaching a Sunday and thinking about what the different parts are doing. So to begin with, as I said, this is Cornerstone, and I've created some just like rough MIDI parts for drums, bass, piano and guitar, and we've got a bit of auto pad in there as well. Now, I'm going to play you what this sounds like initially, and I've made a couple of tweaks onto all the instruments to make them sound a little bit bad, or to, create something that's not quite right about each part. And we're going to go through them, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to just mention briefly about some things to look out for. Okay, so this is what we've got so far. Let me play it to you. I'll play it up to about the second intro. Okay, fantastic. So this already doesn't sound terrible. Obviously, this is with a big pinch of salt, but they're just quite rough MIDI parts, especially the guitar. I haven't recorded a live guitar, I've just used MIDI. But you get the idea. We're thinking about the bare bones parts for each instrument. Now, at the moment, I think, although it sounds okay, and you can tell that it's Cornerstone, right? I think there's some changes that we need to make. So, firstly, let's think about the drums. So let's just solo these. Let's hear it again. Okay, now I've deliberately not quantized these drums. So they're not currently in time. They're actually in the time that I did them when I played them in on my keyboard. So they are quite nicely out of time. So we're going to quantize these. So obviously you can't quantize a real person unless you're recording them. However, you can, bring some encouragement for the drummer to really concentrate on staying with the click. So that's kind of what we've done here. So trying to make sure that our drums are really in time. So now this sounds a bit like this. Okay, tiny bit more in time. And we've got some, what's the actual part that's going on? Well, you can listen to that. But some, basic kick and a floor tom pattern. Okay, moving on to the bass. Let's just listen to what the bass is doing. Okay, one initial change to all the parts I'm going to make straight away is just moving this auto pad down, because that's way too loud. Okay, it's dominating. We don't want that. We want auto pad to just be subtle. Okay, to the bass, you might, so remember the context here is we're imagining we're on a Sunday and we're listening to all the different parts, trying to make sure that they're doing what we want them to do. So what would you say to the bass here? So I think there the bass is doing eighth notes, which I don't think is particularly appropriate for the start of this song, and it's too much energy too soon. Save that for later. So I've just put an erroneous arpeggiator on there, so I'm going to take that off. So now it sounds a bit like this. Okay, already we're getting into that worshipful moment, aren't we? Okay, next, what else could maybe just do with a little tweak, a little MD comment? Remember, we're talking about bare bones theory here, so making sure the bare bones of each part is correct. What about the piano? Well, let's have another listen to what the piano's doing. There's a riff and some chords. So I've left two things in here that I would maybe ask the keys player to change. Firstly, the riff. I think it's quite good to do these riffs as an octave. You don't have to, but it's just a nice little stylistic thing. So what I'm going to do is I'd actually muted the octave, but I'm going to unmute that now. So now it sounds a bit like this. Just listen to that riff. Oh, hold on. Sorry. So I just think that sounds slightly richer if they're covering an important riff, getting the keys player to do it as an octave rather than just a single note. So let's listen to that again. Before it sounded like this, and now just a bit stronger. And then what about the chords? Let's think about these. Kind of nice, but I actually think, again, initially I'd put this down an octave and then I put it up just to kind of deliberately make there be a mistake in there. So I think this would be better down the octave, slightly richer. You want the piano often, the chords not to be too high up the register because they cut through quite a lot. If we listen to this in the context of the whole song, you hear that chord cutting through. One more time. Sorry, let's go back again. We just need to just listen to the chord again. It's kind of nice, but let's just listen to it down an octave. Now what does this sound like? So now I think that blends in a far nicer manner. Okay, the only thing left to look at is the guitar. Now this is what the guitar is doing at the moment. Let's go from bar 5. So in this song, the guitar's just doing a few flicks. The riff is not covered by the guitar, so they're just there to give some ambience. So you might think, okay, this guitar's sounding all right at the moment, to be honest. The thing I would focus in on here, now obviously it's a MIDI guitar, so it's not going to be perfect, but the thing I'd be focusing on here and trying to bring some direction to just get these bare bones right, is the tone of the guitar. Asking the guitar player to try and work on the tone a little bit. Have a listen again and ask yourself, what would you ask them to change? Okay, well firstly I think we can put the volume down a little bit. Maybe just, again that's probably a mixed thing, isn't it? So we don't need to worry too much about volume. I've taken out a couple of bits. So firstly I've taken out my delay. So I don't know if you noticed, but there's some nice reverb on this, but there's no delay. Let's add in the delay again, and now it sounds a bit like this. So it gives it a bit more ambience, which we like, and then the amp as well. Let's just see what the amp is doing. What's the amp doing? Well, it's just putting it through a nice amp, to be honest. This is probably going to be the difference between a guitar going through an amp and not. So hopefully guitarists will have an amp simulator pedal like a Kemper or a Line 6 module. But putting this through an amp is going to probably just give it a bit more of that rich electric guitar kind of sound. Let's just see what this sounds like. We're going to solo this. So this is without. So I think that sounds a lot more digital. And now with the amp. Okay, it still sounds quite digital, but I think it's probably taken the edge off at least. As good as I can get it as a MIDI instrument, I'm sure everybody else watching this video would do much better. Okay, so that guitar, I feel like some of those touches and the ambience that it's creating is actually really helping the song now. Okay, so we've got drums, bass, piano and guitar, and a bit of auto pad. Again, I'm just going to take that down even more. They're all working together, and now this is what we've got. I'm going to play this from the start. And hopefully, unlike the start of this little section, these are all kind of gluing together a bit more now, and we've got an arrangement that kind of feels like it works. I'm going to let this play out until I kind of gave up, so you can have a little listen. So as you're listening to this, pay attention to what the different parts are doing. This is the kind of thing that maybe you should start to aim to have in your head about just a basic understanding of what each individual instrument might be doing over the course of a song. The bass is very simple, long notes. Drums, again simple, playing a solid part. Lovely rich chords from the piano and the riff at the moments it's needed. Into a chorus now. So we should change that piano, it's way too high, isn't it? Let's change that as well. Too high still? Much better. notice in this verse now, guitar's just stepped it up a bit more busy. Still some nice tasteful licks, but adding a little bit more to the energy of this song. And the drums, what's the drums done? Nothing special, just added a bit of rise, that's it. And then the build. And now into the chorus with a big full-on groove. Now obviously that build into the chorus is a bit messy, horrible MIDI vibe, but maybe I'd kind of tweak that and ask the drummer to play a bit more dynamically in that build. I hope that's been helpful. Thanks very much.